everyone! So Urban Decay released 2 new Naked Flush palettes into the Naked line for summer. I picked up one of the 2, so this video is going to kind of be a review on the palette that I picked up as well as a comparison to the 2 other palettes that I own, that being the original Naked and the Native Flushed palette. So if you're here strictly for the comparison, I'll have an annotation somewhere around here and you can just click that and jump straight to the comparison. Otherwise, here's the review on the palette for now. The Naked Flush palette in Streak retails for $30 US, $35 in Canada, and is a bronzer, highlighter, and blush in a sleek, travel-ready compact. All smushed together in one pan, they are 0.49 ounces. The bronzer is described as a pale bronze matte, the highlight is described as a peachy shimmer, and the blush is described as a bright coral. The packaging is a simple, sleek compact that features a mirror, and the individual products are generously sized. However, I wish that there was a little less bronzer and they were divided a bit more equally. I feel like it's 45% bronzer and then the rest of it. But regardless, you're getting 3 products, so it is a convenient size and it is travel friendly. It's very easy to just throw it in your makeup bag for all day touch up. The bronzer is a medium peach brown with fine gold shimmer. The finish isn't matte as it's described. Once it's applied to the skin, you do notice a bit of that gold shimmer, but it is easily blended on the skin. It does apply semi-sheer, but the texture is very soft, finely milled, but I did find that it was powdery. Much like the rest of the Naked Flush palettes, I found that there was a lot of wasted product. I felt that when I ran my brush over the pan to pick up the product, there was just a lot left sitting on top. So the bronzer is powdery in the pan, however, it doesn't apply that way on the skin. The bronzer also lasted 7 hours before showing any noticeable fading. The highlighter is a pale gold peach with a high frost sheen. I found the finish to be more metallic than shimmer, and when applied to the skin, it left behind a high metallic frosted sheen, which did emphasize the look of pores and imperfections, so this might not be for everyone. But the color payoff was true to pan, and the texture was very soft, smooth, and applied evenly. When I first picked up the product with my brush, I felt that it was almost chunky, but it's not noticeable once applied to the skin. It kind of just breaks down and becomes very soft and smooth on the skin. The highlight lasted 8 hours before fading. The blush is a coral with warm undertones and a matte finish. The texture is soft, smooth, but very, very powdery. Just like the bronzer, I noticed a lot of loose powder sitting on the pan once I picked up the product with my brush, but it doesn't necessarily look powdery or chalky on the skin. This blush applied semi-sheer and it was a bit patchy when applied on bare skin, so I'd recommend applying it over top of kind of already prepped skins, whether it's just like a tinted moisturizer or a powder or a foundation. If you already have a base there, it's gonna grab and stick. But with that said, it does become a little bit more difficult to blend out the color. The blush lasted 5 hours before showing any signs of wear, so it did perform the worst out of the 3 in the palette. Welcome to the comparison side of the video. So because I previously owned 2 palettes, Naked and Native, I'm going to kind of compare Streak to Naked and then compare Streak to Native, just so you kind of get an idea. And real quickly, as I've mentioned before in my last comparison video, the packaging is the exact same to the original Naked Flush. The only difference is that they're slightly more rose gold tones, so these are the new palettes, this is the old palette. So I kind of hoped that they would keep that theme rolling where they'd be slightly different. But as you can tell, this is Streak, this is Native, this is Naked. That was kind of a bummer, but the nice thing is with the new palettes is that the stickers on the back are different shades to kind of coordinate which is which. So because this is more corally, the sticker's obviously more corally. So I appreciate that. Naked Flushed in Streak versus the original Naked Flushed. So the Streak bronzer applied more sheer and also more yellow tone than orange like the Naked palette tends to. The texture of Streak is more finely milled, soft, but it's very powdery, whereas the original Naked is on the other side of the spectrum where it is stiff and firm. So because Streak is powdery, I did find it to have a lot of wasted product because it would sit on top of the pan, whereas Naked is firmer, so you don't have as much wasted product. It takes a little bit more effort to get some product out of the pan, but I'd rather that than have a big powdery mess. The Streak highlight is lighter and more of a pale champagne, where the Naked highlighter is a bit darker. Streak appeared more frosted and metallic once applied to the skin, which did emphasize the look of pores and imperfections. I found that the original Naked Flush didn't have that issue. I found that the highlighters in the Naked Flush palettes are the most consistent and they're pretty much the best performing. The Streak blush applied more sheer, it was also lighter and peachier, whereas the original Naked was darker and more of a rose shade. The texture of both blushes was similar once applied applied to the skin, but in pan Streak was loose and powdery, whereas the original Naked was firm and stiff. So like I said with the bronzer, it has a lot of wasted product just because that loose powder just sits on top of the pan. Moving on to Streaked versus Native Flushed. The Streak bronzer is more peach toned and slightly sheer compared to the Native bronzer. The fine shimmer that's in the bronzers was more noticeable in Streak. With both the Streak and the Native bronzer, the textures were similar both in pan and applied to the skin. The textures were finely milled, soft, but very, very powdery. This is a common issue with all the additional Naked Flush palettes to the original. Pretty much all the powders in them tend to be a bit powdery, which was opposite to the original, which was firm. So they kind of tried to correct their mistake, but they kind of went too far with it. So both of these palettes I felt had a lot of wasted product because it was powdery, so it did sit on top of the pan, like I've said. The Streak highlight is darker and peach toned with a gold shimmer, whereas the Native highlighter is lighter, softer, and more white based with a champagne shimmer. Both Streak and Native's highlighter has a high frosted metallic finish that did emphasize the look of pores and imperfections on the skin. But the texture is soft, smooth, and blendable. Like I said, the highlighters in the Naked Flush palettes tend to be the best performing as well as the most consistent in the palette. The Streak blush is darker, more coral with a very slight, fine golden peach shimmer, whereas the Native blush is lighter, pinker, and very cool toned with a straight matte finish. Both the Streak and the Native blushes were incredibly powdery, almost like chalk, and I found that they kind of did sit on top of the skin. Both blushes applied more on the sheer side, so like I've said, I would recommend applying them over top of a foundation or already powdered skin or just something with a base just so that they'll stick better, because they are powdery. So bare skin, no, but if it has something to grab to, yes. So that completes my comparison and review. Overall, these palettes still aren't golden star worthy. I feel like the texture of the bronzer and the highlighter in the Streak palette are an improvement from the Native palette. I still wouldn't say that these palettes are a huge improvement from the original Naked Flush palette. Personal preference, I would rather powder that's a bit stiffer and firmer to work with rather than something that's going to be extremely powdery and loose and sit on top of the pan and make me feel like I'm wasting a lot of product. Overall, they're nice, they're very convenient, and they are travel friendly because of the size of them and the fact that they do have 3 products in one little palette, so they are handy. So let me know in the comments below if you have tried any of the Naked Flush palettes and what your opinions are. These palettes can be purchased from Urban Decay's website as well as Sephora stores, Sephora online, and anywhere else that Urban Decay is sold. As always, don't forget to check out my blog for more details, photos, and swatches, as well as like, comment, and subscribe to show your support. As I always say, I hope you found this review / comparison video helpful, and I hope that you have a fantastic day, and thank you so much for watching.